All right, let's get right into it. If you've spent any time at all in the health and fitness world, you've probably heard the buzz around a peptide called BPC-157. People talk about it like it's some kind of miracle healing compound. So in this explainer, we're going to cut through all that hype and look at what the science really says. We're separating the incredible promise from the hard, cold proof. And, the excitement is totally real. It's coming from clinicians who are actually using it with tons of patients. You've got Dr. Craig Conover, who is a big name in performance medicine, saying it's one of the main peptides he uses in his practice, mostly because of its powerful anti-inflammatory effects. So, yeah, it's no wonder people are so curious. But this raises the million-dollar question, right? When we step away from what doctors see in their clinics and into the world of rigorous, published scientific evidence, what does the data actually tell us? And that, right there, is the big conflict we're going to explore today.
To really get the hype, you first have to understand the incredible reputation that BPC-157 has built up over decades. But here's the catch. Almost all of that research was done on animals. This reputation has earned it a nickname that, honestly, perfectly captures how people see it.
Yep, Wolverine. A nod to the comic book hero who can heal almost instantly. And when you look at the animal data, you really start to see why. I mean, for over 30 years, across more than 100 studies, the results they've seen in animal models have been just, well, remarkable. We're talking accelerated tendon healing, major gut repair, even nerve regeneration, and a system-wide drop in inflammation. This is the foundation, the very promise of BPC-157. But now we have to make the jump from promise to proof. And this, my friends, is where we find a huge and, for a lot of people, a really uncomfortable gap between what we see in rats and what we can say for sure happens in humans.
So check this out. Researchers for the American Journal of Sports Medicine did a big systematic review. They wanted to find all the research out there on BPC-157 for orthopedic stuff like healing tendons and joints. They started with 544 different articles.
Out of all those papers, after they filtered out everything that wasn't a proper human trial, guess how many were left? Just one. A single clinical study on humans. Everything else was based on animal models. The journal's conclusion was pretty blunt. They basically said, hey, despite this thing being super popular, especially with athletes, there is minimal human data. This chasm between the animal research and human proof is the absolute core of the issue. Okay, so let's be fair. We need to look at the human data that does exist. There are a few small studies out there, and it's really important that we understand exactly what they found, and just as importantly, what their limitations are. Now, all the existing studies are what's called pilot studies. This is crucial. They aren't designed to give us a final, definitive answer. Think of them as small, preliminary tests to see if a bigger, much more expensive study is even worth doing in the first place. Okay, so the first one was a 2021 study that looked back at 16 patients who'd gotten BPC-157 injections for chronic knee pain. And the results, on the surface, looked great. Almost 88% of them said they had significant pain relief months later. But, and this is a huge but, scientifically, the study had major limitations. There was no placebo group to compare against, it was looking backward at old data, the sample size was tiny, and the only result they measured was just how the patients felt. Then there's a 2024 pilot study. This one looked at 12 women with a really painful bladder condition. And again, the results were pretty stunning. 10 out of the 12 women reported their symptoms were completely gone after a bladder injection of BPC-157. But you guessed it, just like the knee study, it didn't have a control group, it was super small, and they only followed up with patients for 6 weeks. So while these results are definitely promising signals, they are absolutely not definitive proof. And this brings us to a really crucial mystery. The biggest and most important human trial, a phase 1 safety study with 42 healthy people, was actually started back in 2015. But then it was just canceled. They never published the results or even gave a reason why. This has left a massive, gaping hole in our understanding of BPC-157 safety and how to dose it properly in humans. So this lack of solid human safety data, well, it hasn't gone unnoticed. Let's shift gears and look at the real-world consequences and see how the big regulatory bodies have responded to all this. The timeline here is pretty clear. In 2022, the World Anti-Doping Agency banned it for all athletes.
Then, in 2023, the FDA in the US took action. They effectively stopped pharmacies from legally mixing it up for human use, a process called compounding, and they cited that lack of safety data as the reason.
So what does this not approved status actually mean for you, someone who might be considering it? Well, it's not just a piece of paperwork. It means the BPC-157 you can get today is coming from unregulated sources. There's zero oversight on quality control. The purity can be all over the place, and there's a very real risk of contamination with things you definitely don't want in your body.
So this all leads us to the final critical question. How do you weigh this incredible promise against these very real gaps in proof and safety? It really boils down to a choice between two very different ways of thinking.
Let's just break it down. On one side, what we know. It has amazing effects in animals, and we have positive signals from a few tiny human studies with no major side effects reported. But on the other side, the list of what we don't know is huge. Long-term safety, the right dosing, how it interacts with other drugs, and if it even works for most of the things people claim it does.
And this creates two very different camps. You have the conservative position, which says, look, let's wait for better evidence. So many things look great in animals and then fail in humans, and the safety risks are just too big. Then you have the risk-tolerant position, which says, yeah, I accept the gaps, but the animal data is so strong, and the pilot studies are so positive that it justifies making a personal risk-benefit call.
And that leaves us right here with the ultimate question that sums this whole thing up. Is BPC-157 a genuine game changer, a revolution in how we heal? Or, without proper human trials, is using it just a dangerous game of biological roulette? Right now, the answer to that is still locked away in the clinical trials that have yet to be done.